Liszt liked octaves. Liszt liked jumps. Liszt liked octave jumps. Rapid octave jumps are as close as a pianist gets to a daredevil stunt. They're part of a whole line of piano trickery patented by the 19th century Evel Knievel of the keyboard, Franz Liszt. But octave jumps like these from Liszt's Eroica etude aren't just stunts. They also carry expressive value. In the hands of seasoned virtuosos like these, they sound heroic. But few performances of these transcendently hard octave jumps could ever match what a Korean boy did with them just a couple summers back. And in this video, you'll find out exactly what made his performance of Liszt so spectacular. We'll return to this triumphant bit of piano playing in just a moment, but first, some context. This is Yoon-chan Lim. In June 2022, he became the youngest ever gold medalist of the biggest piano competition in the world this side of Poland, the Van Cliburn. And he did it not only by rising to Olympic-level athletic heights, but by plumbing the emotional depths of a whole ocean of titanic piano pieces, including the biggest glacier of them all, Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. All right, this metaphor is starting to capsize a bit.
God almighty.
Anyway, the point is, Yoon-chan's performances in that competition were not only jaw-dropping, they were tear-jerking. This was especially true for his final round performance of Rock 3, which I covered in detail at the time for the Tone-Based Piano YouTube channel. But for many who were watching around the world, he had already had the gold medal locked down after his semi-final performance of Liszt's 12 Transcendental Etudes. So I went and recorded an equally detailed commentary on Yoon-chan's complete 66-minute Liszt performance. But to this date, I've managed to complete videos on only 5 out of the 12 Liszt etudes. I was just pouring endless hours into them and had to turn to more pressing projects. Until now. A year and a half later, I'm finally finishing the Yoon-chan Liszt series with 3 more video essays on the 7 remaining Transcendental Etudes. And I'll be doing it right here on my very own channel. So if you liked what I created for Tonebase, or maybe you just stumbled in here now and you're digging what you're seeing so far, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Because these Liszt videos are just the tip of the iceberg. Because I'm also gonna make lots of videos that aren't about Yoon-chan, but about lots of other great pianists. And I'll also dig into the endlessly rich repertoire and explore with you the whole weird and wonderful culture of classical piano. But I gotta tell you, it takes an enormous amount of time and energy to create this kind of detailed piano breakdown video. And I want to make as many as I can for you as often as I can, but I'll need your help. So if you really liked my tone-based videos, or you just stumbled in here now and have already developed an irrational confidence in me, I'd be overjoyed if you subscribed to my Patreon. Just follow the link in the description and choose a donation tier that's right for you. With all that said, in just a moment, I'll be handing things off to a considerably younger and brighter-eyed and bushier-tailed version of myself to take a deep dive into 3 etudes at the heart of Liszt's set: Vision, Eroica, and Wilde Jagd. It's gonna be a wild ride, so make sure you stick around to the end, where I've also included a newly recorded segment comparing Yoon-chan's Liszt to that of underground piano icon Ivo Pogorelic. Having said all that, Benny boy, take it away. And then we move to the 6th etude of the set, Vision, which depicts a kind of funeral procession. A funeral for the pianist who never made it out of Mazeppa or Fofele alive.
The Vision, to me, is a rest piece. You're smiling.
Vision is a study in hand extensions and contrary motion, but it also features your typical fare of arpeggios and tremolos and double octaves, which is just par for the course in Liszt. What I want to hone in on in Yunchan's performance is something that both Jed Distler and Anton Nell bring up.
His tonal control. I mean, there was never banging.
None of the two-dimensional banging that you often hear from pianists.
For all the loud and fast passage work in these 12 etudes, these demanding figurations are always voiced and controlled and serving some musical purpose. Take a passage like this. Liszt marks fortissimo con strepito, which loosely translates as make some noise. And Yunchan makes plenty of noise, but it's not a cacophony. There's always shape to it, there's always a direction. In this passage we see tremolos in the left hand and these wild double note arpeggios in the right, and most pianists would just make a racket out of this. Notice in particular how controlled his tremolos are. Not in a mechanical way, but in a way where he's always sensing where these are beginning, where they're swelling, and where they need to come to rest. This is part of what I like to call high definition playing that is a trademark of Yunchan's. It's as if he's zoomed in as far as you can go in Photoshop and really taking care of every single pixel so that when you zoom out, you get as sharp an image as possible. During Yunchan's performance of both Vision and the next etude in the set, Eroica, the chat is getting restless, and some are already preparing to be up in arms if he doesn't take the top prize. In this etude, we see yet again Yunchan's dedication to precision and control, rhythmic exactitude. You can hear it, for example, in some of his arpeggios, which sound like lightning strikes. This performance also showcases Yunchan's variety of touch and his many gradations of articulation. And something that I find characteristic in his playing is he's not afraid to be dry. So many pianists, including myself, are really afraid of true staccato playing, especially in romantic music. For example, here in this left-hand accompaniment, which when combined with the marcato theme in the right hand, creates a really compelling effect. Then, once again, in the ensuing animato passage, Liszt now has 3 layers going on all at the same time, and we get yet another high-definition moment from Yunchan. Interesting thing to note here, Liszt marks right above the main staff an optional extension to this arpeggio for those who are playing on a 7-octave piano. At the time, many Erards, which Liszt favored, went up as high as this G-flat, but there were also plenty of pianos in concert halls and people's living rooms. For example, Chopin's Pleyel, which would only go as high as the F just below that G-flat. And if you're wondering, yes, Yunchan on his 88-key Steinway goes all the way to the top. For those of you who know this work, you're probably wondering, when the hell is he going to get to that amazing, heroic octave passage? Well, we're just about there, and I have to say, I can't imagine this being played more spectacularly than what you're about to hear. Chat's head is exploding, you've got OMGs, double OMGs, and personally, I'm going to give Yun-Chan's playing here 3 whole OMGs.
It's also like creating a tension, and you kind of wait, and then that massive octave passage at the end happens, and you just go for it.
What's so brilliant about it is that we have the main theme in the top line, and it's accompanied by these arpeggiated double octaves at an absolutely rapid tempo, and he doesn't miss a damn note. Now I know music is not about playing fast and it's not about hitting all the right notes, but sometimes when you do those things and you're playing musically, it just can't be beat. Now, I've yet to allude to the name of this piece. Eroica. Almost certainly a nod to Beethoven, whose Symphony No. 3 was named the Eroica and is also in the key of E-flat major. And most musicologists acknowledge that even more than the 5th or the 9th symphonies, the Eroica changed the course of music history. Now, Yun-Chan is quite experienced with Beethoven's Eroica theme, which can be found in the last movement of the 3rd Symphony. In fact, he played Beethoven's large-scale set of variations on the Eroica theme.
The Eroica variations, he already does this where he's playing has such a degree of spontaneity in it as well, in addition to everything else, that he can just sort of go off in unexpected directions. Not at all cheap effects. I mean, every direction that he takes, to me, are really valid artistic paths and interesting to listen to, and not at all out of bounds with the composer's stylistic parameters or whatever you would call that. It's amazing.
Not every pianist who dedicates themselves to the big virtuosic works of Liszt and Rachmaninoff can play Beethoven with the kind of control and sensitivity to motive and form that Yun-Chan can. And he's actually been quoted in interviews as saying that his technique and his aesthetics are rooted always in Bach and Beethoven.
제 뿌리는 바흐 평균율과 베토벤 소나타, 그 곡은 쳐야지 자기가 피아니스트라고 얘기할 수 있다고 생각하기 때문에.
He plays all the Bach 3-part inventions in a concert. He makes each one of them into a little masterpiece.
I would like to second Anton Nell's endorsement of Yun-Chan Lim's performance of the 15 3-part inventions or symphonias. They reveal a deep care and sensitivity to Bach's polyphony. Yun-Chan's dedication to Bach and Beethoven says a lot about how he approaches Liszt. The clarity and sensitivity of lines and form, and the discriminating use of pedal, and that quality of rhythmic control in Yun-Chan's playing is a great asset in the next etude, Wilde Jagd. Now you might be aware that Wilde Jagd is some kind of wild hunt. And of course, hunting songs are a very popular theme, and especially German romantic music. Just about every Schumann piece has a hunt in it. But the wild hunt is something that actually belongs to German folklore. There's an old legend and folktale of witnessing ghost warriors riding through the sky. Now these hunters are truly living their best afterlife, hardly resting in peace, engaging in joyous strife in Valhalla all day long before having a nice meal in the evening and doing it all over again the next day. And that wild, frenzied excitement of these ghost riders in the sky is captured in Liszt's irregular rhythms.
It is ever more effective if the rests are given time. If you count not ever like jumping over, but extending just a little bit.
Liszt really does everything he can to disorient your ear here, and it's important for the pianist to keep a pulse even if you're going to inevitably lose track of the downbeat. After all the commotion in C minor, Liszt moves to E flat for a secondary theme, and here we get a traditional hunting song, much to the delight of Yuncheon Lim. This kid is a half an hour into the Transcendental Etudes, and far from feeling overwhelmed, he's having fun. Speaking of fun, Charlie Funboy is a little bit late to the show. As the section comes to an end, we get a great example of Yuncheon's wonderful ability to segue from one mood to another. His phrasing and timing here is truly suave. He even observes the audience cough that Liszt wrote into his score. Then in the feverish middle section, Yuncheon reminds us that the hunt is still on, with subtle cues in the left hand to remind us of the motives heard before.
The middle section of this piece is as emotionally dramatic and moving as it only gets. And I think it is a big challenge to be able to kind of leave behind the jumpiness and the sparkles of the opening section. It's one of the most passionate moments in probably the whole set.
And as the piece mounts to a climax, we get yet another iconic octave moment, which Yuncheon just absolutely kills. Yuncheon's timing, his sound, his energy, his ability to demarcate different sections and different moods, it's all on display here, and the chat is now beyond convinced that they're hearing the gold medalist. And they're starting to talk about this performance as an instant classic. For all the forgotten hours of music played in international competitions around the world every year, this one is special. This one will be remembered. Speaking of memorable Liszt performances, one of the most stunning Wilde Jagds you'll ever hear was delivered by Croatian pianist Ivo Pogorelic in 1990 in Carnegie Hall. And in many ways, Pogorelic's Liszt is the polar opposite of Yuncheon's. Let's take a listen. Pogorelic's sound is earth-shattering and by no means clean. Whereas Yuncheon plays with laser focus and precision accuracy. But the more decisive difference between the two has to do with their opposite conceptions of tempo and the use of rubato. Yun-Chan takes the liberty of changing tempo within a section where Pogorelich keeps steady. Here, for example, Yun-Chan anticipates the rin sforzando in the coming measure by turning on his turbojets. Pogorelich, on the other hand, is actually more true to the score. Keeping firm in his tempo, growing in accentuation, he stays on his horse and just continues building momentum throughout the phrase. Pogorelich also remains remarkably steady between sections, like in this transition to the soaring espressivo theme. He interprets Liszt's poco rallentando marking with a great deal of poco. He almost doesn't slow down at all. Compare that to Yun-Chan, who comes almost to a full stop and changes color completely on a dime. A bit later, we hear Pogorelich approaching the recap of the second theme, again head on, taking almost no time, and if anything, adding a little breath only after he reaches the climactic C major chord. Yun-Chan, although Liszt doesn't mark it, really stretches out the last bar before the key change, really letting his right-hand tremolos swell until they finally burst. These are two opposite conceptions of musical change. In one, you shake up a bottle so that the pressure on the inside is so overwhelming it breaks open. In the other, you power through the mounting obstacles and arrive valiantly at your destination. While I admire Yun-Chan's performance enormously, and I think his special effects are second to none in this piece, for me, Pogorelich's pacing really gives him the edge in his overall interpretation. One of the advantages of an unwavering pulse is that it can create a really long line. So when Liszt finally does indicate a change in tempo, like in this Animato section, Pogorelich can kick it into the next gear. Since Yun-Chan already maxed out his tempo by the time he got to those octaves, I think he felt compelled to put on the brakes and change color again. So Yun-Chan and Pogorelich really take opposite liberties here. Yun-Chan observes Liszt's dynamic change, but adds his own rallentando, whereas Pogorelich stays steady, but absolutely bulldozes through Liszt's dynamic marking. But his commitment to the forward line and lack of rubato has allowed Pogorelich to accumulate an enormous amount of pent-up tension and anticipation, and that makes his arrivals incredibly satisfying and triumphant. And it all erupts in one of the most feverishly breathtaking climaxes in piano history. I should have mentioned to my younger self that the concept of a wilde Jagd was actually coined by Jacob Grimm in his German Mythology, published in 1835, certainly inspiring Liszt in his own development of this etude. Yun-Chan's tempo fluctuations make for a more episodic reading of Liszt's score, less committed to a single arrival point. It's as if he's documenting different aspects of the Wild Hunt myth, a sort of musical version of Grimm's text. So keeping this metaphor, if Yun-Chan plays from more of a third-person point of view, Pogorelich plays from a first-person experience. He is the Dragon Slayer, and his performance is like putting on a VR headset and going on the Wild Hunt yourself. To be fair, let's keep in mind that this was Pogorelich in his prime, whereas Yunchan is still a teenager, and he has enormous potential still to grow and develop as a pianist. Furthermore, Pogorelich was just offering a set of 3 transcendental etudes, whereas Yunchan's Vilde Jagd came in the middle of a performance of the entire set. So, not exactly an opportune time to suddenly transform into Siegfried. So the lack of a single monumental climax in Yunchan's performance makes more sense when you realize there's still 4 etudes left to go, which themselves amount to about half of the performance itself. But before he gets there, Yunchan has one more trick up his sleeve. He takes the liberty of playing the final phrase presto, or prestissimo even. In lieu of a single sweeping build-up to climax, we get this one final tempo change, a mad dash to the finish line, and it's vintage Yunchan. Punctuated, not afraid of staccato, and utterly thrilling. This video is dedicated to the late Joe Patrich, beloved recording engineer and a fixture of the New York piano scene for 5 decades. Joe was also among a group of benevolent bootleggers, secretly capturing live performances by legendary pianists at Carnegie and other great halls. Pogorelich's towering Liszt performance was immortalized thanks to them.
Pogorelich, May 7, 1990 in Carnegie. In particular, was the Transcendental Etudes that were mind-blowing playing.
Joe broke small rules for the sake of something much bigger. He never made a dime off his pirated collection. He did it for the love of the art form, recording these ephemeral acts of genius for posterity, to be cherished and studied by generations to come. Joe, you left us too soon, but the legacy you left behind will outlive all of us.